Check.
No, it's a guy with his guys, but we take the seats. Set up if someone is coming. Yeah. Then you can sit there. We take these two seats. Okay. Yeah. And if someone is coming, let's kind of.
Alle zusammen?
Wir alle? Nee,
Ja.
ja, nee, wir sind getrennte Organisationen.
Ah, okay.
Chef, who is there? Then you can go to the microphone.
How do you ask for it?
I'll be here during the whole season. So if you need to, I'll just let me know and I'll give you the words.
Perfect. Thank you.
Try. Oh, really?
Yeah, I'll have your part of your picture.
probably. Someone told me. Eva Mendes.
Yeah, that's it.
Dankeschön.
When I go home, I said, Eva Mendes may take the seat for us.
Dankeschön for that.
Bitte.
Yeah, you can say I was with Eva Mendes' sister. Yeah.
That's why the last time I always looked on the left side because I want to know who is this. They took 1 meter more. Yeah. Economy minus.
Well, you know, there's no person do you need to mention a flush in the background?
I'm upstairs.
The door slide.
I'm upstairs. Okay. Oh, but that man is not coming. Hello? No, that man is coming.
Ajá. Y eso hay. Aquí no veo análisis, se supone que ahí está.
That's better. How is it? Yes, it is okay. There was 4 prize. 4 people. And 3 girls. And younger girls. And then now they take their daughters out for lunch.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the third session of the Technical Commission. On Thursday, we considered agenda items 27, 28, and part of 29. Under agenda item 27, we considered the annual reports of the Council for 2016, 2017, 2018, and a supplementary report covering the first 6 months of 2019. Under agenda item 28, we considered aviation safety and air navigation policy. Then we started with agenda item 29 on aviation safety and air navigation regional implementation coordination mechanisms. We divided agenda item 29 to 5 batches, and we considered 4 batches. So today we will start with the 5th batch under agenda item 21. And the 5th and last batch of papers of agenda item 29 deals with other regional initiatives, and we have papers from AFCAC. I will now invite Côte d'Ivoire to present working paper 154 on behalf of the AFCAC AFCAC member states. Côte d'Ivoire, you have the floor for WP 154.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chairman. We would like to congratulate you on your nomination to the head of the Technical Commission, because this is the first time that we are taking the floor. Ladies and gentlemen, delegates, I am presenting this paper on behalf of the 54 contracting states, the members of the African Civil Aviation Commission, AFCAC. This working paper describes the approach and strategies for implementation and monitoring of the Africa's continental safety targets, known as the Abuja Safety Targets, ASTs, and air navigation services performance indicators. The first assessments of the implementation have shown that the main problems are the absence of the framework for the implementation. In order to meet these challenges, AFCAC has developed a mechanism for the implementation for all of the member states. Here we are talking about standardization of training, operational issues, the appropriate resource mobilization, exchange on resources, and safety. The member states of AFCAC would like to have IT systems to promote the exchange of safety data in order to close the gaps in the implementation and ensure that we can find an easy way to ensure progress for all of the states and to enhance the performance of all states. Delegates, given the constraints that I have mentioned, we have adopted a standardization in training and in equipment and safety oversight in order to ensure that there's a solid platform through which we can enhance safety. The Assembly is invited to take note of the concept of the monitoring mechanism proposed for the implementation of the Abuja safety targets. The Assembly is also invited to note the challenges faced by African member states as they implement continental safety and air navigation targets. Thirdly, the Assembly is invited to urge ICAO to share with AFCAC other relevant safety data reports. And finally, the Assembly is invited to request ICAO to support AFCAC in obtaining compliance information from the ICAO Continuous Monitoring Approach online framework and other relevant dashboard data sources. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Côte d'Ivoire. I'll now invite Nigeria to present working paper 190 on behalf of the AFCAC member states. Nigeria, you have the floor.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, Mr. Distinguished delegates. I hereby present working paper 190 on behalf of the contracting member states of the African Civil Aviation Commission, AFCAC. This working paper highlights the achievement of the African Flight Procedure Program, AFPP, and the challenges in the flight procedure design, capabilities, and the capacity building for PBN implementation in Africa. Consistent with the Resolution 838-7 of 2013, African states implemented the AFPP office through personnel secondments and the financial support for the purpose of accelerating PBN implementation. In the region, to this end, Phase 1 was rolled out from 2014 to 2017, with ASECNA as a program host, with the ICAO, Airbus, France, and Kenya taking part in the steering committees. The achievement of the Phase 1 are in the executive summary of this working paper. Equal to the successful implementation of the Phase 1, the steering committee approved the implementation of Phase 2 for another period of 3 years. However, the program was hampered by lack of sustainability of the seconded experts due to lack of effective funding from states and also the funding policy on the experts seconded to the AFPP. Distinguished delegates, the importance of the AFPP cannot be overemphasized, considering that it is a strategy for the attainment of global priorities of PBN, CCO, and CDO implementation in Africa. Consequently, the Assembly is hereby invited to note the progress made through the AFPP to address PBN implementation in Africa, and the request state and other industry players to support financially phase 2 of the AFPP. We also request ICAO to consider harmonization of the work of all the flight procedure programs and adopt the proposed updated resolution in the appendix to this paper to supersede Assembly Resolution A39-14. Thanks for listening.
Thank you very much, Nigeria. I'll now invite South Africa to present Working Paper 180 on behalf of the Africa member states. South Africa, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good afternoon to you and everybody. Dear distinguished delegates, I hereby presenting Working Paper number 180 on behalf of 54 contracting states, members of the African Civil Aviation Commission. This paper, Chairperson, presents actions undertaken by the NSPs and the launch of their peer review program in February 2015 by the ICAO Council President. The main objective of the initiatives was to establish and maintain a high and uniform level of safety within the AFRI region by pooling resources together within the African continent. The working paper highlights the following key developments, Chairperson. Reviews have been conducted based on the ICAO standards of excellence in SMS in several countries which are based on Annex 19, that is the safety management. East African Community Partner have adopted the peer review and have conducted 3 peer review missions in collaboration with CANSO. ATNS and ACSECNA have made a reciprocal review following agreed task. A common peer review manual have been developed by ICAO and it has subsequently been adopted by the NSPs within the AFRI region during a meeting called in 2018 in Sierra Leone. The Steering Committee Chairperson met in June 2019, and the Steering Committee composed of ACSECNA, ATNS, as well as CANSO in South Africa and established new dates for the review of Ghana and Madagascar NSP. A workshop is planned in November to evaluate the use of the manual for peer review. The lessons learned will guide the 2020 peer review planning. In conclusion, Chairperson, the AFRIPLAN project on the implementation of the African NSP peer review program is therefore urged to set up a team to recruit the experts from NSPs to be used for the review. In view of the foregoing, the Assembly is invited to take note of the information provided in this paper, and number B, to request ICAO to continue to provide its support to the African NSP peer review program in coordination with the African NSP Steering Committee. We'd like to use the opportunity to commend the support that we have been receiving as the member states of Africa from ICAO. Number C, we urge African NSP Chairperson to work together to strengthen the African NSP peer review program to enhance safety and efficiency of air transport operations in Africa. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Nigeria. In concluding the presentation of this batch, information papers 71, 73, 87, 89, 205 on the screen are noted and will be listed in the report for this agenda item. I'll give the floor to the Secretariat for any clarifications. None? Okay. So I'll open the floor for discussions. Israel, you have the floor.
That's Italy, actually.
Sorry, Italy. I think there's a mistake with the numbering. Italy. Okay,
Good
Italy.
afternoon, Mr. Chairman, distinguished. Doesn't work. Okay. Good afternoon, Chairman and distinguished delegates. Italy supports the working paper 154 presented by AFCAC that describes the approach and strategies for implementation and monitoring of the African's continental safety targets, known as the revised Abuja safety targets, and the hard navigation services performance indicators. Italy recognized the importance of the mechanism set up under responsibility of AFCAC to promote implementation and determine level of compliance by member states to the 16 high-level safety goals established in the revised ASTs and determine technical assistance required to assist member states in achieving compliance. We also agree with the recommendation to promote the concept of automation of CAA safety oversight systems and implementation of viable methods for effective data collection, analysis and sharing among all key stakeholders. Italy supports also the working paper 180 presented by AFCAC on the progress in the implementation on the African Air Navigation Service Provider peer review program. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Italy. Iswatini, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Eswatini would like to support Working Paper 190 presented by Nigeria on behalf of the 54 African states on the sustainability of the African Flight Procedures Program. I thank you.
Thank you. Ghana.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ghana supports Working Paper 154 presented on behalf of AFCAC by Côte d'Ivoire. Mr. Chairman, the effective implementation and monitoring of the status of any project is a prime mover and key to the success of the project, and which is a fact that cannot be overemphasized. Ghana therefore humbly but strongly supports Working Paper 154 with emphasis on the conclusion of the paper and invitation C and D of the action required by the paper. Ghana also supports Working Paper 190 by Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you, Ghana. Rwanda.
Good afternoon, Mr. President and fellow delegates. I follow my colleagues in supporting Working Paper 190, presented under AFCAC, with special attention to Section 2 achievements and Section 4 sustainability challenges. The data presented gives quantifiable successful results through dedication. However, as stated under Section 4, there is further work to be done, in which will be greatly facilitated with support from ICAO. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rwanda. Côte d'Ivoire, you have the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chairman. Côte d'Ivoire supports paper 180 presented by South Africa. There is a very important role to be played, and as regards the action, points A, B, and C are to be taken into consideration by the Assembly, and so we would like to ask ICAO to continue to support the ANSPs regarding the AFI plan. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Côte d'Ivoire. Looks like we have a lot of support for the three papers. So we'll take the last four in this order, and we'll conclude. Mozambique, Republic of Korea, Nigeria, and IOPA. Then we conclude. So Mozambique, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. All protocol observed for our side. Mozambique supported the Working Paper 180 presented by South Africa on behalf of the 54 member states of ICAO, AFCAC, African Civil Aviation Commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mozambique. Republic of Korea.
And good afternoon, everyone. The Republic of Korea supports Working Paper 180 presented by South Africa on behalf of the AFCAC member states, with the aim of enhancing aviation safety and efficiency and strong cooperation between air navigation service providers. We'd like to express our support for the African ANSP's peer review program. In addition, we also draw your attention to Information Paper 73 of COSASNA member states. We deliver our congratulations to their successful integrated SMS implementation and express our gratitude to the group for sharing its best practices of standardized SMS requirements and acceptance process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Republic of Korea. IOPA, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, but it's Kenzo here, the Civil Air Navigation Services Organization. We would like to thank AFCAC for the working papers 154, 180 and 190. On working paper 180, Kenzo has been supporting the African peer review mechanism since the beginning. This is a great example of cooperation to enhance aviation safety. The Kenzo Sea and Safety Program is the next level of providing solutions to the area identified by peer review mechanism and work globally. We fully agree with the conclusions in paragraph 3.1 that ICAO should continue to support the African ANSP peer review program, and therefore the AFRIPLAN project on implementing the African ANSP peer review program can be set up a team to recruit the expert for an ANSP to be used for the review. We would like to thank AFCAC to inform the Assembly on the progress and importance of the African ANSP peer review program, and Kenzo and its members will continue to support the program further. And we also want to say on working paper 190 that Kenzo stands ready to support the African Flight Procedure Program, developing sustainable capability in instrument flight procedures and PBN. To finalize, we support all three papers. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Council. That concludes the discussions on the three working papers. So, to conclude this batch, I propose the following summary for your approval. The Commission noted efforts made by AFCAC to monitor and measure the compliance level of the Abuja safety targets and performance indicators. The Commission noted challenges faced by the AFI states and the AFCAC in regard to the Abuja safety targets implementation and gathering of safety data through a mechanism it developed. 3, the Commission recommended that in order to fill the non-compliance gaps, ICAO, RSOOs, and other key stakeholders support the AFCAC by sharing available safety data as well as providing assistance where possible. 4, the Commission noted achievements of the African Flight Procedure Program, AFPP, in developing procedure design capability in Africa and assisting with the implementation of PBN. 5, the Commission noted the challenges related to sustaining the achieved benefits and supported the amendment to A3914 to urge member states to continue to provide assistance to the AFPP to ensure continuity and sustainability. And finally, the Commission acknowledged the benefits of a peer review process in improving the provision of regional air navigation services. Thank you very much. That brings us to the end of agenda item 29. Thank you very much. We will go straight to our last agenda item, which is agenda item 30, and it relates to other issues to be considered by the technical commission. We have lots of papers on agenda item 30. I counted about 32 working papers, and it's like a mixed grill. It reminds me of the restaurant. You go and there's a bit of fish, beef, everything in it. So it will be a very interesting agenda item. We will I'll Before we proceed, I'll hand over to Secretariat to explain the batches of agenda item 30.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Agenda item 30 is made up of 7 batches, quite the mixed grill. You will see, as explained by the Chair, the first 6 batches generally are outside the budget that has been allocated in the Executive Committee. Batch 7 is largely already covered by the existing budget, and action has largely been taken by the ICAO Council. We're only saying this at this moment to avoid us continually telling you as we intervene to tell you whether or not it's inside or outside the budget. So if you can persevere with that scenario, we can probably speed up the process with the interventions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much for the clarification. We will proceed straight away with batch 1, which deals with remotely piloted aircraft systems and ATM. I will now invite Finland to present working paper 86. Finland, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm pleased to introduce the working paper 86 on behalf of the European Union and its member states, the other member states of the European Civil Aviation Conference, and by Eurocontrol. New entrants represent an increasing body of actors who are seeking to implement new aviation concepts in airspace, where there is currently little managed activity. The working paper covers 2 different environments. First, I address UAS traffic management, UTM, typically but not exclusively, in airspace below 500 feet, including over cities. As UTM matures as a result of state and regional regulatory and research activities, and the pace of its development and implementation increases around the world, there is a need for ICAO to take a more formal role to achieve greater state involvement. ICAO's involvement should build on existing studies and initiatives and standardization activities, as well as work conducted by ICAO UAS Advisory Group to ensure global harmonization and to bring the governance of drone operations formally under the aegis of CAMP. This would include ensuring coordination of UTM standards and development under the broader topic of urban air mobility, where relevant. ICAO's approach should consider not only how UAS, popularly known as drones, will operate amongst the other drones, but should also address the safe operations of the airspace users most likely to be encountered where most drones operate, especially low-level operations by military aircraft, general aviation, sports aviation, and rotorcraft. The impact on the operations and security of airports should also be addressed. The other area I cover is high airspace operations, typically above flight level 660. The principles for managing and integrating all kinds of higher airspace operations are as yet not standardized or formally defined, but there is a wide variety of civil and military activities anticipated, from unmanned balloons to hypersonic passenger aircraft and suborbital flights that will require new or modified mechanisms for airspace and air traffic management. It is necessary for appropriate provisions to be defined at ICAO level, taking advantage of and relying more on existing regional initiatives. Such ICAO provisions should be flexible and proportionate, enabling creative use of the airspace to current and future uses while protecting the environment. The definition of all aspects of high airspace operations is politically sensitive and so needs early global coordination to respect state security and sovereignty while supporting a regional and global approach that enables operations without replicating the more fragmentary definition of airspace at lower levels. Close coordination with state authorities and the space community will be essential. Collectively, operations by all new entrants will usually not be consistent with existing fundamental ICAO provisions, such as the rules of the air. Consequently, ICAO needs to determine how to best consider all relevant ICAO provisions to identify regulatory obstacles and any need for change. This investigation should build on complement the work being conducted by those states that are already starting to accommodate new entrant operations, as recognized in the Air Navigation Conference 13 recommendations 5.21 and 5.52 be need to progress in the definition of global framework to address the issues regarding safe and secure integration of new entrants. In summary, we would like to recall the proposed actions identified in the executive summary of our working paper and would propose the Assembly to discuss and support the proposed Assembly resolution attached to our paper. Furthermore, and after considering some remarks received on our paper, I would like to bring a slight modification to Action C of our working paper and Action 2 of the proposed resolution by replacing the sentence "place undue burden on the environment" with the sentence "duly addressing environmental implications." So the Action C would read, "Call upon states to establish regulations and procedures within a harmonized and scalable global framework to facilitate the integration of new entrants operations in a manner that does not compromise safety and security," and then delete phrase "place undue burden on the environment" and add "duly addressing environmental implications." And respectively, Action 2 on the resolution to read, "The regulations and procedures established by Member States to govern the operation of new entrants, as well as the common use by all airspace users of the certain facilities and services, shall be arranged so as to facilitate the integration of these operations while not compromising safety and security," and then again delete the phrase "place undue burden on the environment" and add "duly addressing environmental implications." Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Finland. We'll now invite China to present working paper 302. China, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On behalf of the Chinese delegation, I would like to introduce WP 302. This working paper discusses the Distributed UAS Operations Certificate, or DOC. For its use, CAAC is experimenting with licensing an air operator, not an individual, and its management system, a new model for regulating DUAS operation qualification, and explore the feasibility of abandoning issuing license to individual pilots while ensuring the same level of operational safety. With the rapid evolution of autonomous UAS, distributed operation has become a clear industry trend. DUAS means the UAS operation is divided into a number of sub-operations deployed at a single or multiple sites or terminals for coordinated operation. It does not require an individual to possess complete operational competency for the UAS. As the operational safety of DUAS has a low correlation with the individual pilot's competency and experience, the required core competency is losing its professional characteristics. The role of pilot is continually being weakened, and the core competency and behavior indicators are increasingly decentralized. Therefore, identifying the required core competency within the system is neither feasible nor necessary. And this working paper requires the Council to pay close attention to the certification strategy for DUAS operational qualification and to analyze the feasibility of issuing DOC and introduce the DOC pilot project to member states and establish bilateral or multiple lateral mechanism for sharing DOC management experience with China. Thank you.
Thank you very much, China. I'll now invite Indonesia to present working paper 281. Indonesia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, distinguished delegates. This paper presents the UAS operation in Indonesia that describes the granting procedures, the operation permit for UAS operators, and the proposed oversight mechanism for UAS operation within Indonesian airspace. The increasing of UAS operation, especially for small UAS or drones for recreational and commercial, is a condition that every country has to deal with and cannot be avoided in recent years. The tremendous population of drones force every country to manage the operation not to endanger human property and civil aviation. In order to maintain aviation safety, Indonesia developed a procedure for drone operation through national legislation and procedure which contain some restriction as similar to other countries. Indonesia requires drones to be registered and marked in order to identify them in case they are lost or causing damage, and to obtain operation approval issued by DGCA. For drone operation on regular or scheduled basis is conducted by proposing reserved airspace to facilitate drone management and supervision. Those are conducted in order to maintain safety as well as to accommodate the needs of drone operators. The principle of flexible use of airspace, or FUA, was applied to this airspace reserved for UAS operation. The process for the issuance of UAS operation approval recently conducted manually by submission of the hard copy and not integrated for some entities. Based on that situation, Indonesia developing the electronic or digital process so that the process will be conducted more efficiently. Some cases are reported caused by UAS operation, such as the operation of small UAS in the final approach area while the aircraft is in the approach phase. To ensure that UAS operation is safe for the main aircraft operation, the state shall develop a proper oversight mechanism for UAS operation within their airspace. The scope should be covered at least personnel that operate the UAS operation, the conformity of UAS operation with the approval and the law enforcement. The mechanism has required the establishment of guidance that clearly define the scope, the personnel qualification, and also the methodology in conducting the oversight activities. By collaborative with the regulator and stakeholders, Indonesia developing an oversight mechanism for UAS operation. The scope of the oversight, but not limited to this activity, are the conformity of the UAS operation with the approval issued by DGCA, with the note time issued for the operation, with the registration, operator certification, and remote pilot certificate, and also the conformity of security clearance for UAS operation in the specified areas or airspace as the oversight activities. For all the explanation above, Indonesia uses the Assembly to provide detailed procedures and guidance in conducting oversight for UAS operation and requires other contracting states' experiences to be used as a lesson learned for UAS management effectiveness and the oversight of the drones operation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Indonesia. May I remind distinguished delegates to keep their presentations to about 2 minutes, please. Thank you very much. It's now the turn of Saudi Arabia to present WP 353. Saudi Arabia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This paper talks about the proliferation of UAS and the necessity to have an appropriate system of management and integrate it into present ATM. The operations of unmanned aircraft pose opportunities and challenges related to a range of aviation activities in very low altitude airspace. Despite the current development, the present infrastructure is not enough for these operations, and we should take into consideration the future development to ensure orderly development of UA operations. Unmanned aircraft operations, ICAO should develop a regulatory framework for unmanned aircraft systems, considering integration and data sharing with existing air traffic management systems. The increasing number of this kind of aircraft will increase the operations in the airspace, which requires ICAO to provide necessary provisions in order to ensure the use of airspace by integrating the remotely piloted craft in the present airspace, and to develop the necessary concept for this kind of operations that complements the present concept of ATM. The second paragraph talks about some guidance about the operations of unmanned aircraft. It provides a number of concepts to be adopted while ensuring the integration with the present system. The paper proposes some functions for the future system in licensing, planning for flights, and deciding or designating routes, and as well as interaction with SNPs. 2.7 provides for the requirements and guidance. In paragraph C, we are insisting on the role of ICAO for coordination among stakeholders in order to develop the necessary concept for air traffic management. Mr. President, the action is in the executive summary of this paper. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Saudi Arabia. I now invite the Russian Federation to present Working Paper 478. Russia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The 13th Air Navigation Conference recommended to continue developing guidance material in support of the safe operation of RPAS. The use of unmanned technologies for testing and checks of ground-based radio and lighting systems has undeniable benefits for international civil aviation, for economic reasons, as well as for safety, efficiency, and the environment. For example, the use of unmanned aircraft systems, UAS, for such checks make it possible to save, on average, 27,000 tons of fuel annually. The Russian Federation is presenting a paper which underscores the need for a timely and globally coordinated regulation of these services using UAS and RPAS. Such aviation services allow the international aviation community to benefit already now without involving the issues associated with the safe integration of RPAS into non-segregated controlled airspace and at aerodromes. The working paper presents actions which call upon ICAO to develop single internationally coordinated approaches, methodologies, criteria, and high-level requirements to make it possible to harmonize and regulate air transport with the aim of its orderly, safe, and sustainable development. In order to achieve these goals, the Russian Federation would like to propose to the Assembly to include in the technical program of ICAO's work this issue on the development of guidance material on the use of UAS, included RPAS, for conducting flight tests and checks on ground-based radio navigation flight support system and airport lighting and equipment. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Russia Federation. I'll now invite ICCAIA, ACI, IFALPA, and IFATCA to present WP 209. It will be presented by IFALPA on behalf of the international organizations. IFALPA, you have the floor.
It's ICCAIA is presenting today.
Okay.
Thank you. I think. Anyway, thank you, Mr. Chair. So working paper 209, UAS traffic management, presented by ICCA, ACI, IFALPA, and IFATCA, discusses a new class of airspace users challenging the fundamental principles of our aviation system globally. It is generally accepted that UTM is an underlying and enabling concept that will facilitate the integration of drones into both high and low altitude airspace for commercial applications and urban air mobility. ICAO published Unmanned Aircraft Systems Traffic Management, a common framework for core principles for global harmonization in 2019. Elements of UTM outlined include the need for authoritative aeronautical and geographic data sources, the need for centralized authority to manage and disseminate airspace directives and management, and to establish a trust framework for data exchange. Other recommendations include performance and risk-based approach to airspace access when an operator files a mission plan. ICAO endorses the notion of UTM as a subset of ATM, indicating that the same rigorous development and integration philosophy of our traditional ATM system should also apply to the system used for a new class of airspace users. These are reflected in paper 209, and the Commission is invited to consider these actions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ICCAIA. We now have WP 196 to be presented by ACI, Council, IFATCA, IFALPA, and IATA. I'll not mention which organization will probably link my lesson. You have the floor. I think it's ACI this time. ACI.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, and good afternoon to all delegates. On behalf of ACI, CANSO, IATA, IFALPA, and IFATCA, co-signatories of WP 196, I would like to introduce this paper on disruption to airport operations by drones. This is a matter that requires urgent attention by ICAO, states, and industry. In addition to the safety risk which comes directly from unauthorized drone operations, several major airports have already been shut down by drone sightings. This major disruption has led to frustration for passengers and substantial economic costs. The industry is ready to work with ICAO in drafting the required international guidance material. This work would build upon existing standards and guidance and the work of ICAO technical bodies, as well as evolving state guidance and regulations. The outcome would include harmonized processes for initiating detection of and countermeasures against unauthorized UAS that may interfere with international aviation. The Assembly is invited to request ICAO to establish a mechanism by which the industry can provide input to mitigate the risks of and improve government and industry response to unauthorized UAS operations, such as by developing guidance material, developing a generic concept of operation that could be used by states to establish procedures, and defining taxonomy related to UAS incidents and accidents. While I have the floor, may I also support other papers that have been presented just now. Working paper 86, European Union, working paper 281, Indonesia, working paper 478, Russian Federation, and working paper 353, Saudi Arabia, as well as working paper 302, China, which represents an interesting idea to investigate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ACI. I'll now invite Cuba to present WP 356. Cuba, you have the floor.
Buenas tardes. Good afternoon, Chairman. First, we would like to join in congratulating you, as have all delegations, on your election as chair. And we know that you have been doing an excellent job and will continue to do so. Cuba is presenting Working Paper 356 with the support of all of the countries mentioned, which represent the majority of states on LACAC. And the paper is about the need to be able to access essential data for the automated processing of the new flight plan format. So the proposal is to create an online database which service providers need and states need to be able to access the technical parameters of the latest aircraft models. And this will facilitate and ensure the automated processing of flight plans in the new format. Chairman, colleagues, the proposal is in response to the growing demand of air traffic between flight information regions and the need of air traffic service units to have the aforementioned data. We have assessed the difficulty of not being able to process flight plans in many cases because the necessary data was not available. And just to give you an example, in the Havana FIR over a 30-day period, we found that there were 900 rejection messages for flight plans. And we identified the main causes for these rejections. And there are also, there's a set of data which is usually included in flight plans, and also elements of document 8643, aircraft type designators, which has these data sets which are of varying levels of complexity. We believe that these data should be included in the new format, and there should be an online tool available to service providers and states. We believe it is of the utmost importance for ATSUs to perform effectively and efficiently, to have a tool of this type. And so we invite the Assembly to recommend that ICAO coordinate with industry for the possible development of an online database, website, or similar mechanism that provides the data for each aircraft type as set out in our working paper. And we also suggest that access to this tool be free of charge for states through focal points notified to ICAO. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Cuba. We have one final paper, WP 418, to be presented by the Dominican Republic.
Sí, muchas gracias. Thank you very much, Chairman. Good afternoon to everyone. It is my honor to present Working Paper 418 on behalf of the Dominican Republic, implementation of a procedure to mitigate flight plan errors. The aim of this paper is to present the procedure followed by the Dominican Republic and our efforts to mitigate errors in flight plans. Erroneous flight plans and duplication and missing flight plans are a significant safety risk that has been ongoing for a long time. Efforts have been undertaken to mitigate this problem, including the creation of an ad hoc group in the NAC region. And part of the work of this group has been to establish a procedure to harmonize the procedure for flight plans in the region, which makes it easier to mitigate errors. And this is described in the working paper. The Dominican Republic has implemented this procedure by means of agreements with airlines and other providers so as to facilitate provision of flight plans. The outcomes have been positive. We have seen a significant reduction in the error percentage rate in our flight information region. We must cite certain factors that contributed to the success of this initiative, namely staff training and the support of users of the system. There are pending issues, and we are calling for collaboration, and that is automated processing of the supplemental flight plan. We have reached out to providers of the service so as to get them on board in the search for solutions, but we haven't achieved anything so far. We are working together with IATA, and we hope that in future we will, thanks to their cooperation, be able to have information for supplemental flight plans, as is the case for regular flight plans. The Assembly is invited to consider the procedure for issuing flight plans and to use our experience as an example for their states, so as to mitigate flight plan errors. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dominican Republic. In concluding the presentation of papers under this batch, we know the relevant information papers on RPAS and ATM indicated on the screen above. The list of IPs will be included in the report. Before we proceed into discussions, we will need support for WP 209 and 196 presented by the international organizations. We need at least 2 states to support before we could include them in line with the standing rules. I see several states have supported the 2, so they'll be included. I'll now give the floor to the Secretariat for any clarifications.
All right, thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. The Secretariat would appreciate if Finland, regarding working paper number 86, if you would provide us the revised wording that you spoke for the Assembly resolution. We would also appreciate permission from the Commission as a whole to rework the wording so that it reads like a standalone resolution. There are certain items that we need to correct, such as action verbs at the start of each resolving clause. So with your permission, we will adjust the style. Furthermore, in terms of working papers 281, 478, and particularly 353 in its section 2 of the paper from Saudi Arabia, these all call for activities on ICAO's work program related to UAS activities and UAS traffic management, which are unfunded and may not be undertaken without additional resources. There has been a proposal that is considered in the, or that will be considered in the Executive Committee regarding specific work arrangements on UAS. So there will be some discussion over there that will be looking at the broader method for new ways of working with industry. That'll be considered under Agenda Item 26. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the clarifications. I'll now open the floor for comments, contributions. Republic of Korea, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Republic of Korea supports Working Paper 196 presented by ACI and other organizations. UAS present new aviation opportunities and potentials but there are increasing safety issues and the need for response to unauthorized UAS. In this regard, the development of relevant guidelines and clarification of the role relationship among stakeholders will be important means to cope with current safety issues. We also support Working Paper 418 and Working Paper 86. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Republic of Korea. Spain, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. Spain supports the proposal by Finland in Working Paper 86. In this initial stage of the UTM development, ICAO needs to support and encourage activities being carried out in the states and regions and allow a forum for cooperation and sharing of best practices. Further on, after this issue matures, ICAO needs to review its provisions and take a global approach to addressing the needs for UTM with full participation by states. Likewise, in Europe, great steps are being taken to define UTM systems, which is set forth in Working Paper 209. We'd also like to thank Saudi Arabia for their Working Paper 353, which sets out the development of important UTM concepts in line with European developments. Further, the proliferation of RPAS and their operation in proximity to airports warrants harmonized measures that will protect that infrastructure and ensure operational continuity and safety. In this respect, Spain supports Working Paper 196. Finally, the benefits of use of RPAS in testing and radio aids at airports set forth by Russia in its paper recommend the development of guidance, and Spain supports this working paper. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Spain. Qatar, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Qatar support Working Paper 86 presented by Finland on behalf of European Union, ICAO and Eurocontrol. ICAO needs to itself as the global focal point for the integration of the EU entrance. This needs to be done while maintaining aviation safety and respecting contracting state rights and prerogatives in terms of national security and sovereignty over airspace above their territory. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Nicaragua.
Good afternoon, Chairman, and my thanks. Nicaragua expresses its support for the paper presented by Cuba, 356, and we've lost the sound.
Yeah.
Sorry, we've lost the sound. Since COSESNA representatives are here, I'd like to focus on Working Paper 14.
It looks like we have problems with the sound. Nicaragua, still not getting the sound. Then we'll come back to you. I'll invite United Arab Emirates to take the floor.
شكرا سيدي الرئيس.
Thank you, Chairman. The United Arab Emirates would like to support Working Paper 356 presented by Cuba, the Latin American states, which spoke of the access to essential data for the processing of new model flight plans. And there was a recommendation for there to be an electronic database. And we also support the working paper presented by Saudi Arabia, 353, as well as Working paper 86 proposed by Europe and presented by Finland. And of course, we support 281 by Indonesia and the working paper 196 by ACI, Airports Council International, which calls for the implementation and development of guidance material to frame the ATM systems. We believe that the working groups should accelerate their work to finish these issues so that we can have standards that will have an impact on the traffic flow for civil aviation around the world. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, UAE. Romania, it's your turn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, taking into consideration all particular aspects in operation of the unmanned aircraft system and proposal of the aviation stakeholders for digitalization, develop and implementing the unmanned aircraft specific UTM system and more applications that use artificial intelligence and 5G and clouds, a solution for command and control of unmanned aircraft. We need the progress in definition of the global framework to address and the issue regarding the safety of secure integration in control airspace of the new type of aircraft. They are unmanned aircraft system. So we encourage the ICAO to continue the role of the facilitator and improve the collaboration and cooperation and sharing the best practice to support the regional initiative and secure the increased involvement of the states. So Romania support the working paper 86, 353 and 196. All is deal with the problem in unmanned aircraft operation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Romania. I'll invite Iceland to take the floor.
Mr. Chairman, delegates, working paper 196 presented by ACI, CANSO, IATA, IFALPA, and IFATCA contains a very relevant industry initiative to address the increasing safety hazard to aviation caused by unmanned aircraft systems, and for the record for the scope of this hazard, it directly affects a risk to international civil aviation operations. It is a hazard commonly affecting the INS, flight ops, security, and the aerodromes domains. The industry presents a proposal from hands-on experience already with the hazards from unauthorized unmanned aircraft systems, interfering with conventional air traffic on and around aerodromes in particular, although the hazard is not limited to these areas. The aviation industry now has to live with increasing numbers of occurrences involving unauthorized UASs operating within the airspace in the vicinity of aerodromes and affecting aircraft operations on aerodromes. The industry is offering support to address this matter. Iceland agrees that the urgent attention is appropriate and supports this paper.
Thank you very much, Iceland. Costa Rica, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. Costa Rica would like to give its support to working paper 209, 196, mitigating UAS operational risk, 356, access to essential data for automated processing of the new flight plans, and finally, working paper 418 presented by the Dominican Republic on mitigation of errors in flight plans. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Costa Rica. United States.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The United States supports the revised Working Paper 86 presented by Europe and 281 by Indonesia. With respect to Working Paper 302, the United States supports the role of ICAO in taking a leading role with states and industry in the standardization of the exchange registry services. The DOC concept in China is just one way to integrate, along with many other proposals and concepts that should be considered for possible international application within the scope of ICAO's remit. Thank you.
Thank you, United States. Singapore, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I begin, on behalf of the Singapore delegation, we would like to express our gratitude to everyone for the support given to us at this morning's council elections. Thank you all. Sorry about that. Yeah. Now, let me move on to the intervention proper. Singapore supports Working Paper 356 by Cuba and Working Paper 418 by the Dominican Republic. Singapore strongly believes the FFICE concept will enable the management and dissemination of flight plan data and flight information in a safe, efficient, and globally harmonized manner. We thus urge ICAO and states to consider the expedited implementation of FFICE, which will overcome the limitations of the current flight plan procedures and improve safety and efficiency of ATM operations. On Indonesia's Working Paper 281, Singapore agrees that continued attention should be paid to oversight of small UAS, particularly now that cross-border operations are on the horizon. We support Indonesia's call for sharing of experience and some harmonization in this area. It is therefore important for states and industry alike to continue to engage and align on the issue of small UAS operations with ICAO in a facilitation role. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Singapore. Nigeria.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nigeria supports Working Paper 478 by the Russian Federation. There is definitely a need for us to have a universal guidance on the use of UAS RPAS to conduct flight tests and checks on ground-based radio navigation support systems. Nigeria also supports Working Paper 196 by the ACI. There is, of course, a need for a mechanism which the industry can provide inputs to mitigate the risks and improve response to unauthorized UAS operations. In addition, we support the Working Paper 281 by Indonesia. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nigeria. I see overwhelming support for the working papers on the RPAS and ATM. And the screen is really full. But we are here to serve you. So let's just invite 4 more. Netherlands, Uruguay, South Africa, Cameroon. Netherlands, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, everybody. The Netherlands wish to support Working Paper 356 and Working Paper 353. Thank you.
Thank you, Netherlands. Uruguay.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, colleagues. On Working Paper 353, with the expected increase in this fleet, many of them recreational UAS below 1,000 feet, we believe that there will be an increase in flights for transport and deliveries, and this in both controlled and uncontrolled airspace. And ATM should be in a position to provide services so as to create an integrated, safe, efficient system that allows for data sharing. ICAO should implement UTM concept based on shared use and exchange of information and promote technical and operational framework, rules of operation, and access to integrated airspace, and consider obligations and responsibilities of service providers and operators. This will lead to a collaborative environment involving states and industry stakeholders. Uruguay supports Working Paper 353 presented by Saudi Arabia. In addition, In Working Paper 356, it's clear that having an online database free of charge would be of great benefit to states in mitigating errors in flight plans and reduce the rejections and automatic messages to that effect, and also reduce the wait times for air operators, thus boosting capacity, performance, and safety among ATSUs. Uruguay supports paper 356 presented by Cuba. Thank you.
Thank you, Uruguay. South Africa.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. South Africa supports Working Paper 86 and 353. We would like to appreciate the work done in this area by obviously various organizations and states. We believe that ICAO must continue to provide leadership in the development of ICAO SAPs. South Africa fully supports information sharing with regards to UTM, as this will simplify the management of RPAS and the implementation of UTM where necessary. The development of UTM regulatory framework, we believe that it will be a breakthrough. We also support Working Paper 418 from Dominican Republic with respect to flight plan errors. We believe that sharing of information of this nature help other regions to improve where they are lacking. We used to have this as an issue within the AFI region, and we have managed to resolve the issue, not completely, but we're there. With regards to Working Paper 478, by the Russian Federation, South Africa over and above supporting the paper itself, we're proposing that ICAO consider expanding guidance material to include other relevant activities such as runway inspections and perimeter fence inspections, etc. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, South Africa. Cameroon.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chairperson. Cameroon supports Working Paper 86, 196, 209, 353, and 478 presented by the Russian Federation. Cameroon takes note and welcomes the measures presented by the various states and international organizations to improve the framework of the use of RPAS in the current world context. And given the standards for unmanned aircraft, we see the importance of the implementation by ICAO of standards within the framework of this system to guarantee safety and security of operations. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take just two more. Nicaragua, COSESNA. COSESNA has been on hold for a long time. And we'll invite them to take the floor, followed by Canada. Well, if we reverse the order, Canada, you have the floor, followed by COSESNA.
Thank you, Chair. Canada is pleased to hear about the work being done by the CAAC in Working Paper 302, and in particular to learn about the Distributed UAS Operation Certificate pilot project. This is a new topic that deserves thought. We agree that there is a responsibility on manufacturers to ensure safety in these instances. As this departs from well-established positions in the ICAO RPAS panel, Canada is interested in learning more about the pilot project. It would be helpful if our Chinese colleagues could brief the relevant panels and working groups on the results of the pilot project at the panel and at JARIS. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Canada. COSESNA. It looks like they are not around. So now.
Okay, gracias.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry.
Buenas tardes, señor.
Good afternoon, delegates. COSESNA is representing its 6 states: Belize, Guatemala, Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala, Costa Rica, and we support Working Paper 418 presented by the Dominican Republic on implementation of a procedure to mitigate flight plan errors in view of the need to reduce the error rate in flight plans, and this is in line with the information paper 75 presented by COSESNA. We describe a number of projects to this end. COSESNA is developing flight plan procedures and hopes to be able to make these available to other states in short order. And this would be for general and commercial aviation in upper airspace. In the Dominican Republic, this initial procedure will serve as an example to the rest of the region and enhance automation and efficiency. This will be to the benefit of safety and efficiency of air transit. We urge you to read COSESNA's information paper 75, representing its member states. Thank you.
Thank you very much, COSESNA. This concludes batch 30.1. That's the first batch of working papers under agenda item 30. To summarize the discussions and conclusions, the Commission agreed to the following points. ICAO should continue its role as an international forum for cooperation, collaboration, and the sharing of best practices on UTM and higher airspace operations, facilitating dialogue between new entrants, states, and relevant stakeholders, and review ICAO provisions. In light of the discussion, the Commission agreed to submit for adoption by the plenary a resolution from Working Paper 86 as amended. Further to this, the Commission called for referral to Council, the need for detailed procedures and guidance for UAS oversight activities, development of a UTM regulatory framework, and guidance on the use of UAS / RPAS to conduct flight tests. The Commission recommended that the Council review the proposals with respect to existing funded priorities and the availability of extra budgetary resources. With respect to the wider issue of exploring options for direct industry input into the deliberations of ICAO, the Commission noted that the Executive Committee was considering such matters under Agenda Item 26. Support was received for the referral to Council to consider a preliminary feasibility study for a distributed U.S. Operations Certificate, DOC for short, again, with respect to existing funded priorities. The Commission agreed to recommend at this time a task for ICAO to consider the incorporation of the technical parameters specified in Working Paper 356 into DOC 8643. The work of the Dominican Republic on avoiding flight plan errors and the helpfulness of sharing of experience were noted. This concludes the discussion of the first batch of papers. Thank you very much. We'll go straight away to the second batch of papers under Agenda Item 30 relating to airport operations and infrastructure. I'll now invite Norway to present Working Paper 82. Norway, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon to all. I am pleased to introduce Working Paper 82 presented by Finland on behalf of the European Union and its member states, the other member states of European Civil Aviation Conference, and by Eurocontrol. Reference is also given to Working Paper 352 presented by Saudi Arabia and Working Paper 188 presented by IATA, focusing on the same issues and which we both fully support. The ATM CNS system are evolving, and so are the associated CNS threats and vulnerabilities. While satellite-based CNS systems take a growing part in the overall ATM system and enable improved efficiency, the occurrences of interferences against those systems have significantly increased. GNSS outages become a regular experience in global operation, especially in some parts of the world. Such experience undermines the significant investment made by aviation in these technologies, causes additional effort and cost, and in some cases, even safety issues. The loss of crews' situational awareness from malicious origin is classified as a cybersecurity threat and cannot be tolerated in civil aviation. This is of no doubt that intentionally sending misleading signals to replace the accurate signal is a far more serious threat to flight safety than the loss of this signal. In the short term, states should apply necessary measures to avoid the commercialization, proliferation, and illegal use of transmitters, such as jammers, which may impact satellite-based CNS systems. This is also a global trade issue, which impacts all users of satellite-based systems, not only aviation. To maintain spectrum free from harmful interference, aviation authorities, service providers, radio regulatory authorities must continue to ensure close collaboration. In parallel, states should reinforce civil-military collaboration regarding GNSS testing and other activities, which may impact satellite-based CNS systems. When assessing the interference risk associated with conflict zone, it must be recognized that the use of satellite-based CNS system can potentially be impacted beyond that zone. In the longer term, considering the move from the traditional CNS system to the integrated CNS concept, CNS resiliency to interferences need to be addressed at the global level in a holistic approach while ensuring an efficient and coordinated evolution between the infrastructure architecture, new technological capabilities, operational procedures, radio regulatory authorities, and civil-military coordination. To achieve this resiliency objective, states should be encouraged to a transition towards a future CNS infrastructure based on two layers. A backbone of recently standardized or being standardized global technologies, mainly satellite-based in the form of secure CNS services, complemented by an independent minimum operational network based upon optimized ground infrastructure and/or airborne components providing continuity to the CNS service in the case of contingency. In summary, we invite the Assembly to agree on the requested action as contained in the executive summary of the Working Paper 82. Furthermore, we request the Council to act with urgency on measures aiming at the elimination of harmful interference to GNSS, as in Action A3 in our Working Paper and Action A2 in Working Paper 352 from Saudi Arabia. And we would like ICAO to develop guidelines and best practices to mitigate safety risks as identified in Action B in our Working Paper and Action B1 of Working Paper 352 from Saudi Arabia. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Norway. I'll now invite Saudi Arabia to present WP 352. Saudi Arabia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This paper presents the challenges to documentation of some ASBO applications. In the AGAMP, which consists of the likelihood of GNS being impacted by interference. The 6th edition of the Global Air Navigation Plan has defined a global technical level, level 2, the technical global, which includes an updated draft of ASBOs. Since these ASBOs depend on GNSS for positioning or navigation or timing, it can therefore be impacted directly or indirectly from any loss of signal. Paragraph 2 of this paper considers the impacts of outage of GNSS signals, the very low strength of GNSS signals received from satellites at user receivers make GNSS vulnerable to interference and other effects, either intentionally or unintentionally. Therefore, this will impact the applications for ADSB, ADSC, or ELTs. It will also impact indirectly the aircrafts in that area. Despite the fact that outage of GNSS signals may be measured as stipulated in document 9346, still we cannot exclude it totally. That's why we call on ANSPs to get ready to address outage or the loss of GNSS signal by risk assessment, as well as defining mitigation measures when there is a loss or outage. This paper also underlines the necessity to have a strategy to address the weakness of signals in an effective and in an effective way in order to ensure the smoothness of air traffic. This paper deals with or specifies some strategies to GNS disturbance or mitigation, as was stipulated in document 9849. In order to ensure the continuity of GNS and therefore to avoid its implications on ASBOs. This can be done through elaboration of a solid framework to address interference or outage. It can also be addressed through cooperation between ICAO and airspace users by developing ground-based and air techniques in order to address the loss of GNSS signals. The action is provided in executive summary. Since I have the mic, I would like to support the paper 82 presented by Finland on behalf of Europe and Eurocontrol and EASA, as well as the proposal therein, especially urging the member states to take the necessary measures to prohibit the use of any devices that can affect the air navigation, to coordinate with stakeholders in order to prevent interference, call upon ICAO to provide guidelines and collect best practices that have proven their usefulness. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Saudi Arabia. Working paper 188 will be presented by FATCA, IFAPA, and IATA.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. Working paper 188 by IFATCA, IFAPA, and IATA emphasized the role of global navigation satellite system in providing essential position timing informations, which has now resulted in substantial efficiency, capacity, and safety benefits. GNSS applications extend way beyond navigations and has now become an essential component of communications, surveillance, and flight safety and control system. Equipment such as ADSB, satellite communications, and aircraft terrain awareness and warning system are all utilizing GNSS signal. Since the last assembly, IATA has received an increasing number of reports of harmful interference to GNSS, some of which have a concerning implication to flight safety. As GNSS is now a necessary cornerstone of the daily flight and ATM operations, effective mitigations of harmful interference will ensure the benefit of GNSS continue. The Assembly is invited to recognize the unintended impact of harmful interference to civil flight operations and to exercise caution to the maximum extent possible to protect the safety of civil aircraft. The Assembly is also invited to implement mitigation measures as contained in the ICAO GNS manual and to ensure that appropriate frequency regulations are in place to protect GNS signal. To reduce the operational impact of GNS interruptions, it is necessary that contingency procedures be established and that essential conventional navigation infrastructure are retained. For the longer term, the Assembly is invited to request that ICAO and state provide robust support for the development of a global strategy for alternative position navigation and timing in coordination with the aviation communities. We stand ready, Mr. Chair, to support ICAO and state on this important effort. Thank you.
Thank you very much. United Arab Emirates to present working paper 208, UAE.
شكرا سيدي الرئيس.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. United Arab Emirates would like to present working paper 208 concerning communication by satellite systems. Civil aviation depends on reliable communication links, in particular that the vast technological evolution during the last decades made it possible through satellite systems, mobile satellite systems. We think that this technology has significant advantages compared to traditional radio communication, high frequency and very high frequency communications. These advantages can be summarized in the availability of satellite network, satellite coverage area, satellite data bandwidth. That's why we think that these devices are useful, effective, if they are used on board airplane in commercial flights. That's why we would like the Assembly to note the information provided and prepare regulatory documents concerning the use of mobile satellite systems in order for use in civil aviation. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, UAE. It's now the turn of Indonesia and Canada to present WP 94. Indonesia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is indeed a great honor for me to present, on behalf of Indonesia and Canada, Working Paper 94 that identify the needs for ICAO to develop global standard for the design, certification, and operation of water aerodromes as envisaged by ICAO Annex 14. At the global level, seaplanes are now a growing sector specifically in manufacturing and are being utilized more frequently to support states and islands offering scheduled services to and from water aerodromes with larger aircraft. With more than 17,000 islands, the Republic of Indonesia is the world's largest island country. Most of the travel between the islands is only practically visible by air. In Canada, the number of commercial flights originating from water aerodromes has significantly increased since 1999. Canada has 326 registered and more than 2,000 unregistered water aerodromes. There are more than 150 commercial float plane operators that operate 450 registered aircraft. With an estimated 500,000 passengers traveling in Canada by scheduled seaplane each year. These figures highlight the need for specific global water aerodromes requirement. It is important to note that similar water operations take place in other parts of the world, for example, in the Maldives and many others. Countries have long recognized the importance of developing seaplanes bases or water aerodromes, which could be the best mode of transportation for areas with specific geographical challenges. In addition to providing recreational access, it is also a valuable tool for evacuation process in emergencies, a high priority for Indonesia and other states. However, despite ICAO Annex 14's define that aerodromes can be an area of land and water, there are no ICAO global provision specifically related to water aerodromes at this time. To address this long outstanding need, several states have developed their own regulation for water aerodromes in isolation. However, none of these individual efforts are coordinated globally through the ICAO coordination machinery. The lack of ICAO rules has resulted in the absence of usual audit tools available related to the oversight of water aerodrome operation or means for state to self-assess implementation. Given the increase in magnitude of water aerodromes operation worldwide, many states will benefit from the development of global rules to certify water aerodromes for seaplanes operation. Indonesia, together with Canada, proposes that ICAO, as a priority, develop the required such rule or standards. With respect to budget matter, we are of the view that such effort will have a very minimal on the budget of the organization, as state will provide the expert at their cost to the ICAO voluntary workforce related to the SARP's development. The expert may work remotely and therefore the budget needed will be very low. This working paper invites the Assembly to consider a draft resolution as attached in the working paper. The resolution is required to ensure that the challenges be addressed appropriately in ICAO. The resolution will serve as sustainable basis for the work of the organization on this matter. Developing such global standard for the design, certification, and operation of water aerodromes will have significantly positive impacts, particularly to developing countries, on advancing safety standard as it will further support states to harmonize and improve safety. I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Indonesia. We'll again invite Indonesia to present working paper 262. Indonesia.
Sorry, what?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, distinguished delegates. Greeting from Indonesia. Indonesia Working Paper 262 concerning about small aerodromes, especially in mountainous area. This small aerodrome provides a mean of transportation in Indonesia that is impossible with any other transportation, and it is also different with stallport because it's only an unsealed land, unmanned, with unpredictable weather surrounding this area, which is used for takeoff and landing by single-engine aircraft, especially in mountainous area eastern of Indonesia. There are approximately 314 small aerodromes that have already operated in Indonesia. This was built by local community, companies, missionary, and local government to support logistic, economic, business, and religious activity. Directorate General of Civil Aviation Indonesia established guidance material for small aerodrome, which has been published as DGCA Manual of Standard CASA Part 139, Volume 1, Chapter 13, Aerodrome Standard for Small Aerodrome. In order to prevent any aircraft incident and accident occur and to ensure safety operation, we invite this assembly to request the Council are as follows. 1. Review existing standard and recommended practices related with the aerodromes. And number 2, develop specific standard in order to address the design, management, safety, and reporting requirement for small aerodrome in mountainous area. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Indonesia. I'll now invite the Russian Federation to present working paper 396. Russian Federation.
Спасибо.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In 2018, in accordance with the procedures approved by ICAO and the WMO to create space weather centers for international air navigation, Russia and China have undergone an audit by a group of international experts, and they meet the requirements for ICAO centers. According to the results of the audits, they received the grade of A, which is the maximum, and they fully comply. In connection with this, the Russian Federation and China have created a consortium to provide international air navigation with real-time data on space weather. This is so that they can act as a single provider of information. The relevant agreement was signed and sent to ICAO with a proposal to grant this consortium global status. Recently, the Russia-China Consortium has held several organizational events to improve the work of the centers pursuant to the requirements presented to the global centers. Specifically, there's regular and ongoing monitoring of space weather for air navigation within the Russian Federation, and the drafting and submitting of advisories in the event that threshold levels are exceeded. There's a backup hardware and software system in place which fulfills the functions of a space weather center for international air navigation, and they have determined a procedure for joint work. They have coordinated a technology platform and protocols for information exchange. They are verifying and validating space weather information. They have created a system for quality assurance for the provision of space weather information. Since the informational service for space weather will be provided for the first 3 years without recovery of the expenses by the states who have organized the space weather advisory centers, neither the users nor the ICAO budget will bear additional expenses resulting from the creation of the global center. The Russian Federation is requesting that the ICAO Assembly support that the ICAO Council issue a decision on the designation of the consortium as a global center, which will make the work of the ICAO Space Weather Service more effective. And ultimately, it will facilitate improved aviation safety on an international scale within the context of hazardous space weather phenomena. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Russian Federation. There's one final paper under this batch, that is WP201, to be presented by the WMO. WMO, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to introduce working paper number 201 to you on behalf of the World Meteorological Organization, WMO. I'm presenting this from the upper deck of this conference hall. WMO is the United Nations authoritative voice on weather, water, climate, and other environmental related issues, and WMO has had a working arrangement with ICAO since the 1950s. Working paper 201 summarises particular areas of intensive ongoing work within the aeronautical meteorology domain, both of ICAO and of WMO, in support of the Global Air Navigation Plan and the Aviation System Block Upgrades methodology. The paper draws attention to the threats posed to flight safety by adverse weather conditions in particular and a changing climate scenario due to climate change. It also highlights concerns with regards to diminishing availability of expert technical resources. At the Air Navigation Conference last year, through recommendation 2.3/1, states and international user organisations were requested to ensure that adequate expert capacity is applied in the collaborative management and development of aeronautical meteorological services. In addition, ICAO was requested to ensure it has sufficient capacity and expertise to progress the work on the development of provisions relating to aeronautical meteorology. While a significant body of work and a concerted effort is underway both within ICAO and WMO to respond to the current and the foreseen needs of aviation users, a prevailing lack of expert technical resources is placing immense pressure on those experts currently involved in responding to the evolving requirements. Unless appropriate and necessary additional resources are secured, the pace of progress of air transport modernisation and or the quality of output of the aeronautical meteorology community could be detrimentally impacted over the coming years. Action by the Assembly is given in the executive summary of Working Paper 201, and I should also draw delegates' attention to Information Paper WP 202, which provides a more detailed overview of WMO's work, ongoing work in support of the evolving needs of aviation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That concludes my introduction.
Thank you very much, WMO. This concludes the presentation of papers under this batch. We note the several IPs presented under this sub-agenda item, and they will be included in the report. I'll now hand over the floor to the Secretariat for any clarifications.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, everyone. With respect to WPs 82, 352, and 188, the actions for ICAO are within the scope of the existing work program. With regard to WP 262, requesting standards for small aerodromes in mountainous areas, you may wish to note that Annex 14, Volume 1 currently contains some design provisions related to small aerodromes. Also, the ICAO Starport Manual Document 9150 contains guidance for the planning and establishment of such aerodromes. On this basis, the Commission might wish to recommend a review of the guidance in Doc 9150 with a view to updating the material, taking into account existing priorities funded through the 2020 to 2022 budget and availability of extra budgetary resources. As far as WP 396 is concerned, an official request by both China and the Russian Federation has been made to ICAO, and the request is expected to be considered by the ICAO Council in early 2020. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Secretary, for the clarification. I'll now open the floor for discussions. Republic of Korea, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Republic of Korea supports Working Paper 82 by Finland on behalf of European member states and Working Paper 352 by Saudi Arabia. Republic of Korea has the same perspective for their resilience against signal interference to satellite-based ASEAN system. Also, Republic of Korea supports Working Paper 94, presented by Indonesia and Canada, about developing of more detailed ICAO guidance for the water aerodromes. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Republic of Korea. United Arab Emirates.
شكرا.
Thank you, Mr. President. United Arab Emirates supports Working Paper 94 presented by Indonesia and Canada concerning the operations of water airports, pointing that UAE has already regulated such airports as well as guidance for the certification of airspace. In the absence of SARPs in this sector, we are ready to put our resources and expertise in case the Assembly has decided that ICAO should elaborate such guidance material. We also support Working Paper 352 presented by Saudi Arabia and Working Paper 82 from Finland concerning interference with GNSS signals for air navigation. Middle East region has issued guidance material in order to deal with the risks of this interference. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, UAE. Spain, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon to all. Spain supports Working Paper 262 by Indonesia with regard to developing standards for small airports and mountainous areas. We believe that the studies on this should go to the aerodromes panel and take account of due proportionality for small aerodromes and be based on the existing standards in a number of states. Thank you.
Thank you, Spain. Kenya, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In support of Working Paper 82 and Working Paper 188, Kenya wishes to note that reliance in satellite-based CNS for the provision of air navigation services has the potential to lower the cost of operations, but the cost effectiveness gains can only be sustained by ensuring resiliency of this globally shared infrastructure. As such, development of appropriate interference detection mitigations and guidance for assessing vulnerabilities is highly welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenya. Netherlands, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Netherlands support Working Paper 94 and the development of specific SARs for water-based aerodromes receiving international traffic. This will allow the development of coastal regions and islands with abrupt orography or of limited size. Thus, it will be necessary to provide the flying public with a safety level comparable to the land aerodromes. Therefore, we support asking the ANC to involve the Aerodrome Design and Operations Panel to include this item in its working program, taking due account of the ongoing initiatives in this regard at state and national level. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Netherlands. I invite Venezuela to take the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. The Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela supports Working Paper 82. We believe it is very important, all of the work that could be done to develop guidance and best practices to mitigate safety risks associated with civil military activities that might impact CNSC systems. And industry should develop capacities for mitigation and notification for interference for satellite-based CNS. We also support Working Paper 352 on mitigating GNSS vulnerabilities by means of frequency protection and what to do if, in case of loss. We believe that guidance material should be produced to this effect. Thank you.
Thank you, Venezuela. Norway, it's your turn to make an intervention.
Thank you, Chair. Norway support working paper 94 presented by Indonesia and Canada, and especially Action C regarding recommendation on development of specific SARPs for water-based aerodrome. And we see this necessary to provide the flying public with a safety level comparable to the land aerodromes. And Norway has developed a national regulation on design of water aerodromes and offered to share experience in the future work of the ICAO Aerodrome Design and Operations Panel. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Norway. It's now indicating Israel, but is it Italy? Israel or Italy? You can take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Italy supports Working Paper 82 presented by Norway. We agree that the current evolution of the ATM communication, navigation, and surveillance system towards an integrated satellite-based CNS system, while bringing advantages in the system, is introducing also new threats and vulnerabilities. In particular, the problem of interference against satellite-based CNS signals that is becoming increasingly important has to be addressed at a global level with a holistic approach. An interference-resilient satellite-based CNS system should be based on a backbone of standardized satellite-based technologies, complemented by a minimum operating network, based on ground and airborne components and air traffic control procedures, which provide contingency of the CNS services in case of satellite-based service unavailability. In addition, interference detection and reporting capabilities has to be developed in combination with an appropriate legal framework to act upon interference caused by illegal transmitters. Besides, the civil-military coordination has to be reinforced regarding activities which may impact satellite-based CNS systems and interference risk associated with conflict zones. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Italy. Bangladesh, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bangladesh supports the Working Paper 94 by Indonesia and Canada. We especially put emphasis on the proposed action number 1, where it is mentioned regarding considering the draft Assembly resolution attached along with the working paper. Bangladesh fully supports the Assembly resolution related to development of ICAO provisions for water aerodromes and agree that it be included in the document Assembly resolution in force. Bangladesh also supports the working paper 208 by UAE, as we find it puts light on the extremely emerging issue, and we urge to consider the proposal made in the working paper, especially under Section 3. About working paper 82 by Finland on behalf of the member states of EU, ICAO and your control, we support it, and we would especially put emphasis on the proposed action mentioned in Action A34 and Action B of the paper. Bangladesh supports the working paper 352 as well, presented by Saudi Arabia. Thank you.
Thank you, Bangladesh. Brazil, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and fellow delegates. Regarding the working paper 262, Brazil agrees with the position of the Secretariat. In addition, in our case, at least, in the case of non-compliance of SARPs, we consider possible to issuance of an exception based on an aerodrome, or better, an aeronautical study provided by the aerodrome operator. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Brazil. India.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon. India would like to support working paper 94 presented by Indonesia and Canada, and feels that there is a need for development of specific standards and guidance materials for water aerodromes. India is also developing a number of water aerodromes. In the absence of any specific guidance, it is really difficult to develop such aerodromes. So India would strongly support for the development of such aerodromes. And India would also like to draw the attention of the Commission for and 6 will provide support for working paper 262, though Secretariat has already provided the clarification, but it is really challenging to meet the Annex 14 requirement for such hilly airports, small airports at hill. If ICAO could come out with some standards where if Annex 14 requirements are not met, how it is to be handled. So that will be very useful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, India. Saudi Arabia.
شكرا السيد الرئيس. بإضافة إلى دعم السابق.
Thank you, Chairperson. We support paper 82 submitted by Finland on behalf of the EU member states. We would also like to thank the UAE for having presented working paper 208. This paper relates to a highly important issue to ensure air traffic safety. We appreciate the work and the recommendations in it relating to the need to create a framework, a regulatory framework for providing regulation of mobile satellite services. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Saudi Arabia. I invite Canada to take the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We'd like to highlight our support for papers 82, 188, and 352, and thank the delegations thus far for support on working paper 94 that addresses a gap that impacts a growing number of states. Like our colleagues in the UAE and in Norway, Canada has also committed substantive resources and expertise in the past and working on that issue in a national context, and looks forward to working on it through ICAO with other states to ensure that the traveling public has equal access to equivalent safety levels from both land-based and water aerodromes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Canada. South Africa.
Thank you and good afternoon, Chair. I would like to support the sentiments expressed by Italy with regard to working paper 82. So South Africa supports that and also encourage the call for ICAO to develop guidelines and best practices for use by states, regional and global levels to mitigate the safety risks related to any civil or military GNS testing activities or other activities which may impact CNS systems, for example, intentional jamming and share lessons learned. RSA or South Africa has established a future surveillance and cybersecurity strategy that will look into satellite-based CNS system, which will be applicable to South African environment. Regulatory framework is also in place for the allocation of frequency management spectrum. Legal implication for GNS system is also included. With regards to working paper 262, South Africa supports the development of guidance material and the sentiments expressed by the Secretariat with regard to the provisions that exist and also to update working paper 9150 in that period mentioned for 20 to 2022 in view of the budget. With regards to working paper 201 presented by WMO, South Africa congratulates ICAO and WMO on their ongoing effort to modernize air transport system through the development of aeronautical meteorological capabilities and capacity within the GANP and GASP framework. The areas of work which are highlighted under paragraph 2.2 of the paper are comprehensive and require the availability of adequate technical and non-technical expertise within ICAO and WMO and the state to achieve what is required to support the ASPO. South Africa is also pleased that the paper does not only highlight the current challenges, but also those that are most likely to impact on the air transport system in future, this also refers to the climate change and the environment and emissions and so forth. So South Africa supports the call by WMO to ensure the availability of technical and non-technical skills to support the work of WMO and ICAO. ICAO and the state in the development and implementation of aeronautical meteorological program. South Africa also supported the call under C by WMO for the states to make available technical expertise to assist ICAO in their work. South Africa would also like to highlight the problem with brain drain in states that do not have the required financial resources to retain their expertise, and would like to urge ICAO and WMO to assist in this regard. And this in particular also refers mostly to the AFRICA states and the Latin American, where the Med subgroup have been abolished or dissolved. And yet we have got the MED-SG in Europe and in Asia Pacific, and that is where we see most of the progress being made with regards to aeronautical meteorology. This calls for a consent, so the work between ICAO and WMO needs to be enhanced, and close working together needs to really happen in that area to ensure aeronautical meteorology is geared for the work that is required for the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. May I remind distinguished delegates to make their interventions very brief. We have a limited time to complete this agenda item. We'll have to come back to review all the draft reports for 27, 28, 29, 30 before being presented to the plenary. And as I speak now, my screen is very full. There were 15 requests to take the floor. And if each delegate uses 3-4 minutes, it means 1 hour, and we'll be nowhere near completing our agenda item. So I'm in your hands. I'm just pleading with you to keep it very brief. Otherwise, we'll not be able to finish. And we need to move a bit far. It's already past 4, 12 minutes past 4. So please keep the interventions very short. We'll probably take 3 or 4 more. But so far I see an overwhelming support for the working papers under this agenda item. So I invite Portugal to take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to express Portuguese support working paper 208 on regulation of mobile satellite systems. We fully concur with the clear message in this working paper that satellite services are becoming more and more important to a safe and efficient global ATM system, and that the provision of these services are global. The application of state-based oversight to these systems is becoming extremely difficult and costly due to their global presence. If we are to have a harmonized and safe global ATM system, these service providers need some form of global recognition that permit individual states to regulate these systems and its use without further investigation. Portugal recognizes that this issue is not new and was identified by ICAO as part of the net performance-based communication and surveillance implementation, and that cloud service providers are critical in ensuring effective performance, but are not under the oversight of any authority. The role of ICAO in satellite communication with aircraft was explored during the 10th Air Navigation Conference in 1991 and was seen as a facilitator and coordinator. The complexities of the institutional and legal arrangements and interfaces between concerned parties were addressed at the same conference, Doc 9583 refers. A review of those findings, taking into account today's environmental, including relevant stakeholders, is thus supported by Portugal. Portugal, therefore, fully supports this working paper and requests ICAO to establish a working group to investigate how to effectively regulate and oversee the global service provided by satellite service. Portugal would also like to stress that a close coordination with the ITU as a responsible UN organization for radio spectrum and orbit resources needs to be ensured. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your attention.
Thank you, Portugal. Paraguay.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Good afternoon to all. Paraguay supports Working Paper 208 presented by the United Arab Emirates. Aviation is increasingly dependent on this type of system, and the trend is growing, so we need to take all possible actions to find effective ways to regulate satellite service providers. And we strongly support the regulation of mobile satellite systems. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid we may have to cut it a bit short. So we just invite 4 more: Russia, Federation, China, Australia, and IFALPA. With your permission, please. Russia Federation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Russian Federation supports Working Paper 92 on the aerodrome guides by Indonesia and Canada, and especially the action point in B and C. Thank you.
Thank you, Russia Federation. China.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. China supports WP 396, a consortium between Russia and China, meets the requirements of ICAO and WMO while willing to play a better role. Also, China supports WP 352 to protect the signal of air navigation satellites, which is very important. Thank you.
Thank you very much, China. Australia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and good day to all. Australia supports Working Paper 94, proposing the development of SARPs for water aerodromes. We'd like to thank the Russian Federation for Working Paper 396 and welcome the level of interest around the world in the important issue of space weather. We are very conscious that a process is underway and suggest this Commission recommend welcoming this additional interest, but not seek to change the process underway, lest such changes delay the go-live of the global service currently under preparation. Australia supports the intent of Working Papers 188 and 352, and we welcome the clarification from the Secretariat. We do, however, note that there is a need to exercise some caution in ICAO prescribing an alternative system for all states based on a European needs assessment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Australia. Finally, we have IFALPA.
Sorry, it's ICCAIA.
ICCAIA, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, everybody. ICCAIA has the following comments relative to Working Papers 82, 352, 188, and Working Paper 208. With respect to Working Papers 82, 352, and 188, ICCAIA supports the recommendations of these working papers, but strongly recommends that industry be continuously involved in these initiatives to enable sharing of information with states. With respect to Working Paper 208, Working Paper 208 proposes that ICAO should consider how to implement effective arrangements to regulate the satellite service providers. ICCAIA emphasizes the need for any future framework to be based upon performance-based criteria, and that much of this work has already been done. For example, there are sufficient performance criteria in ICAO provisions for Annex 10 to support the safe and efficient use of GNSS. In addition, ICAO document 9869, Performance-Based Communication and Surveillance Manual, specifies and allocates operational, functional, safety, and performance criteria for CNS ATM systems, i.e. through required communications performance and required surveillance performance in order to support global air traffic service provision. The performance criteria are allocated to communication services, which include satellite services, aircraft capability, and aircraft operator. The PBCS concept includes post-implementation monitoring programs on the local and regional basis with global exchange of information. This ICAO PBCS framework shall continue to evolve, addressing the needs for new performance targets as well as emergence of new technologies. In addition, ICCAI would like to point out that during the first meeting, the Legal Commission of the Assembly considered the work program for the Legal Committee. ICCIA noted that there was a proposal to expand item 8 in the committee's work program to include a study on international legal issues relating on all satellite services for civil aviation. ICCIA suggests that the legal committee should first consider the international legal issues associated with these services prior to any attempt to introduce regulatory framework. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, ICCAI. I believe you bear with me. We have such a tall agenda, and we cannot go on ad infinitum. So we will conclude at this point. And to conclude batch 30.2 related to airport operations and infrastructure, we wish to summarize the discussions and conclusions as follows. The Commission considered GNSS-related issues and agreed with the proposed action by states and ICAO to strengthen CNS resilience and mitigate harmful interferences to GNSS in coordination with industry, noting that the actions for ICAO were within the scope of the existing work program. The Commission also agreed that ICAO should examine an international solution to the regulation of mobile satellite services providers, noting that such activities were unfunded and may not be undertaken without additional resources. 3, the need to address the design, certification, management, safety and reporting requirements and operations of water aerodromes was supported by the Commission, noting again that the activities will be unfunded. This proposal was also supported by an Assembly resolution as amended. The Secretariat has been provided with minor amendments by presenters to the resolution, and it will be reflected in the revised version of the draft report. The Commission also agreed that a review of the ICAO Starport Manual be referred to the Council, taking into account existing priorities funded through the 2020 to 2022 budget and the availability of extra budgetary resources. The committee noted the nomination of the China-Russian Federation Consortium as a global space weather center for international air navigation, and that an official request by both states had been made to ICAO, and that the request was expected to be considered soon by the ICAO Council. Finally, the Commission noted the importance of the availability of appropriate technical resources in aeronautical meteorology to sustain and enhance the standards making and implementation support activities, as well as the working arrangements between ICAO and the WMO. The Commission agreed that states should be urged to ensure that appropriate and necessary expert resources in aeronautical meteorology are made available to ICAO. Thank you very, very much for your cooperation and support. That concludes the discussion of the second batch on the operations, airport operations infrastructure. We will move straight to the third batch and the agenda item 30, which relates to flight operations. Is it UK? So we will now invite the United Kingdom to present working paper 108. UK, you have the floor.
Sorry, I believe it's Spain presenting this working paper.
Okay, Spain, you have the floor.
Gracias.
Thank you, Chairman, and good afternoon to everybody.
Order. Georgia, you wanted to take the floor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it was supposed to be presented by Georgia on behalf of Finland and European member states and states from ICAO and Eurocontrol. But I will be okay if it's presented by Spain as well.
Well, Spain, do you want to present or you want Georgia to present?
No, entendíamos que...
Well, we did say that Georgia would do it. Thank you very much.
Georgia, you have the floor.
Thank you. It's a long day, obviously. Thank you, Chair. I would like to briefly introduce working paper number 108, presented by Finland on behalf of European Union and its member states, other member states of European Civil Aviation Conference and Eurocontrol. Furthermore, the European Union would like to inform the Assembly that in the period since the first publication of this working paper, New Zealand has indicated their desire to also be associated with this paper as co-sponsors. Recently, we have seen an increase in new business models in aviation. For example, transnational or cross-border operations such as airdrome operators with activities in different states belonging to a single parent company, air navigation service providers that provide services in more than one state, training organizations with satellite operations in other states, or so-called group operations, where air operators with AOCs in different states belong to a single parent company are now common. States are experiencing challenges in conducting oversight of such activities. This paper proposes that an integrated and cooperative oversight system would assist states in addressing these challenges. Cooperative oversight refers to states cooperating with each other to ensure oversight on the basis of identified risks, safety priorities, and past oversight activities of organizations performing cross-border activities. In a cooperative oversight scenario, the state responsible for oversight of the organization may agree to have oversight tasks performed by the state where the activity takes place, or enter into an agreement with another state or a regional safety oversight organization. The Chicago Convention and its annexes describe the duties of the state of registry and the state of the operator. The provisions of Article 83 bis of the Chicago Convention, providing for transfer of certain tasks from the state of registry to the state of the operator, may not sufficiently address the need for cooperative oversight of complex cross-border or multinational operations. Therefore, this paper recommends that ICAO should assess the wider concept of cooperative oversight with the aim of developing more efficient and effective oversight models to assist states in meeting their obligations under the Chicago Convention. More specifically, we suggest to give the task to different panels to assess the situation in their domain, which would then allow for a decision on the way forward. This could be presented by Secretariat at the High-Level Safety Conference in 2021. New industry business models also demonstrate the need to strengthen the integrated or cross-domain approach applied by authorities. To remain relevant in a fast-changing world, not only in terms of technology, but also in terms of state and industry operating models, ICAO should strengthen its cross-domain approach across the whole spectrum of the aviation system, including industry, and apply and promote integrated risk management. In conclusion, Chair, effective safety oversight is a crucial pillar in the safe and orderly running of the aviation system. Oversight must be able to ensure risks are identified and adequately addressed regardless of where they originate, be it from operations in another state or operations of another aviation domain. Therefore, we urge states to enhance cooperation in this domain, acknowledging the role of the state of the operator and ICAO to develop the appropriate framework for cooperative oversight. In this context,
we would like to propose the Assembly resolution annexed to the paper and invite the Assembly to A. Request ICAO to develop a common understanding of cooperative oversight and its applicability. B. Request ICAO to facilitate implementation of risk-based oversight as an important pillar of safety risk management by developing a toolkit on cooperative oversight. And C. Request ICAO to review the SARPs that relate to the role and responsibility of the state of the operator and the state of registry to determine if there are barriers to cooperative oversight and to address those identified barriers. I thank you for your attention, Mr. Chairman, and sorry for a little bit of confusion in the beginning.
Thank you, Georgia. I now invite the United Arab Emirates to present working papers 117, 124, and 121. UAE, you have the floor for the three papers.
شكرا سيدي الرئيس. تقدم دولة الإمارات العربية المتحدة.
Thank you, Chairman. The United Arab Emirates is presenting Working Paper 117. And this is about standardization of certification requirements for foreign operators. Oversight and certification requirements for foreign operators have increased in the past few years to a point that it's become crucial to standardize and harmonize them. As a result, the Assembly is invited to take the following steps. One, acknowledge that there is a need to define standards for foreign operator certification and instruct ICAO to provide member states with more guidance on what is expected for the oversight and certification of foreign operators, with due consideration to the fact that foreign operators play a significantly positive role in the economic development and sustainability of countries visited. If I may, Chairman, I would like to move now to give the floor to my colleague to present the next paper.
شكرا سيدي الرئيس. تقدم دولة. Thank you, Chairman. The United Arab Emirates present Working Paper 124. This paper discusses the conversion and validation of personnel licenses. The paper aims to open the discussion to standardize the practice of converting and validating a foreign license. The mechanism for conversion and validation is quite detailed in the Manual of Procedures for the Establishment and Management of a State's Personnel Licensing System, document 9379, and it relies a lot on the information provided by the foreign issuing authority. However, some challenges persist, and some clarifications are necessary for the countries to align the practice and understand the terminology involved, which enables the contracting states to meet their obligations under Annex 1 personnel licensing. And therefore, the Assembly is invited to A, instruct ICAO to acknowledge that conversion and validation are essential for some states where the training organization system is not sufficient to meet the demand for aviation personnel. And B, to instruct ICAO to review the guidance for further elaboration and harmonization of the process of validation or conversion with due consideration of Item 3.1.1 in Document 9379, Part 2, Chapter 3. Thank you, Chairman.
سيقدم.
And now I'll give the floor back to my colleague to present the next paper.
دولة الإمارات العربية المتحدة.
The United Arab Emirates has the pleasure to submit for your consideration Working Paper 121, entitled Human-Machine Interface in Aircraft Operation. Technology can bring new risks that, if they're not properly mitigated, can be catastrophic when advanced technology is not well understood or managed. For example, the introduction of a new aircraft type or model is a technological challenge for a state other than the state of design. Such states have generally very limited knowledge about the product or techniques required to ensure safe operation under their jurisdiction. Data, such as operational suitability data, OSD, or field services branch, FSB, can assist in providing the necessary mandatory training, but there might be ambiguity or confusion when the content or level of such mandatory training is not appropriate to the risk, as evidenced by reports following accidents in recent years. Progress has been achieved by states, but follow-up of recent accidents shows that more has to be done. Chairman, the Assembly is invited to take the following actions. A, instruct ICAO to rationalize through the annexes or guidance the process for importing a new aircraft, in particular the roles and responsibilities of each state involved. B, instruct the state of design to continue providing essential design data to determine the safety level and ensure the safe operation of aircraft is communicated unrestrictedly in a timely manner to the state of registry or operator. Confidentiality and intellectual property rights must be upheld. The principle of exception can only be raised for disclosure of essential safety data. C, we urge states of design to harmonize their certification procedures and specifications unless it's essential to do otherwise for safety reasons. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, United Arab Emirates. I'll now invite the United States to present Working Paper 200. US, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm pleased to present this paper on behalf of the United States. ICAO Circular 95, the continuing airworthiness information of aircraft in service, plays an important role in providing member states with the means to share continuing airworthiness information between the states of design, states of manufacture, and states of registry. Recently, the United States experienced difficulty distributing continued operational safety information necessary to address urgent aviation safety matters. Numerous undeliverable email addresses obtained from the circular resulted in unacceptable delays in forwarding information requiring immediate attention. A cursory review of the entries in the web-based Circular 95 earlier this year, as the paper was drafted, showed that the significant number of entries were unavailable, had not been updated since the system's initial launch in 2014, or were missing a CA airworthiness contact email address. Unusable information in Circular 95 forces member states to identify alternate means to communicate vital information for continuing airworthiness regarding the safe operation of aircraft. Working Paper 200 therefore recommends ICAO and states ensure the continuous and timely update of information contained in Circular 95. We invite the Assembly to recognize the importance of ensuring that web-based version of Circular 95 contains accurate contact information and agree to the actions in this paper. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, United States. I will now invite Australia to present Working Paper 232. Australia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Australia thanks ICAO, member states and industry for the work undertaken to date towards the implementation of the Global Aeronautical Distress and Safety System, better known as GADS, in support of improvements in global tracking of aircraft and enhancement of search and rescue, response and accident investigation. Australia also thanks the co-sponsors of this paper, New Zealand, South Africa, and subsequent to its publication, the Maldives, as well as other states such as the EU, which have indicated their support. The paper concerns the introduction of the new Autonomous Distress Tracking ADT system, mandated for global implementation on the 1st of January 2021, and invites the Assembly to consider two recommendations. The first concerns the readiness for global introduction of the ADT system by the 1st of January 2021, which is not that far away. We recommend ICAO seeks advice from member states and from industry on the preparedness to meet this target. This will inform ICAO's subsequent planning, resourcing, and address any gaps. The second recommendation concerns ICAO supporting for additional work on Annex 12, Search and Rescue, and the related Annex 6, the Operation of Aircraft Implementation, which are directly relevant to the successful implementation of the GADS. I would note in passing that the Russian paper 360 has much in common with the Australian paper, except perhaps our Russian colleagues are a little bit keen to revisit the date right now. We'd prefer this work done first. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Australia. We invite the Russian Federation to present working papers 360, 307, and 358. Russian Federation, you have the floor for the three papers.
Спасибо, господин председатель.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will start with Working Paper 360 because it has a direct relationship to the previous paper presented by Australia. At the 13th Air Navigation Conference, ICAO proposed completing the development of SARPs and PANS provisions, enabling the implementation of the GADS system. The conference also noted the importance of states' assessments and to have the possibility to provide official comments on them. Given the question of requirements for aircraft equipage and the obligations of operators to provide tracking that are defined in Annex 6, this is important. Then we need to have new procedures and means not only on board, but we also need to have a coordination of the actions of search and rescue and other bodies. We believe that the implementation of these facilities and procedures, given the specific nature of ADT, will not be possible without substantive changes to at least Annexes 11 and 12 and the corresponding PANs. The drafting of the necessary amendments and additions of these documents is already underway, and they must be reviewed by states in accordance with the established ICAO processes. We need to provide sufficient time in order for them to be integrated into national regulations. Given the current state of affairs, completing this by the 1st of January 2021 will be difficult. And we have a particular concern about this. But in addition, we have some other concerns, specifically regarding the creation and the use of a repository for ADT. This is also currently underway. Right now, this is something that would be preferable for use, but it is not obligatory. And therefore, many states and other users would, including service providers, would have to go through a lot of requirements and fulfill them. So ICAO should regulate this as well to ensure uniform use. Mr. Chairman, the Russian Federation supports the GADS. However, right now we think that it is not realistic to assume that all of the issues associated with the ADT implementation can be resolved in the time remaining before the 1st of January 2021. Nevertheless, in our working paper 360, we propose a cautious approach to reviewing this timeline. And we also fully support the working paper 232 presented by Australia. And we believe that after the discussion, the actions proposed in both of the papers may form the basis for the Commission's recommendations to the plenary. Thank you for your attention.
Следующий.
The next paper will be 307. We must recognize that after the scale was adopted on the ICAO phraseology, the number of accidents related to problems in this area has gone down. However, there are still problems regarding the radio telephony phraseology in English. And there is no scale right now, and therefore, we need to have a training program and testing for which meets international standards and must be internationally regulated. Therefore, the Assembly is invited to make a decision on the need to develop additional requirements for a scale to assess proficiency of radio telephony phraseology in English and include this matter on the ICAO work program. And next, the Assembly is also invited to make an additional decision to form an ICAO panel of experts to develop additional requirements for the ICAO radio telephony English phraseology proficiency assessment scale. And this would include the development of an amendment on Annex 1 personal licensing, and on to the convention, the SARPs and the convention, establishing these requirements. And the last document will be Working Paper 358. Currently, when we look at the level of English, right now we only assess spoken skills. And this means that the engineers sometimes do not have the capabilities in written English, and sometimes this makes problems for flights. Therefore, in this context, we propose to take a decision about the need to develop additional requirements for proficiency in written English for aircraft pilots and technical personnel. If A is successful, then we would like to resume the work of the Price SG group to determine the written English proficiency requirements for flight crews and technical personnel, including by drafting an amendment to Annex 1 with respect to the STARPs establishing requirements for the necessary written English proficiency level for aircraft pilots and technical personnel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Russia Federation, for the three papers. It's now the turn of Canada to present Working Paper 257. Canada, you have the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Compte tenu du nombre d'attaques au laser.
Thank you, Chairman. In view of the number of laser attacks and implications for safety in 2018, Canada introduced a global laser strategy and has introduced stricter regulations. In particular, Canada has stepped up education and awareness raising so as to address this critical safety problem. This working paper gives an overview of Canada's strategy to respond to laser attacks and reports on progress since June 2018. This strategy covers the critical issue of portable lasers used against aircraft that can dazzle pilots and distract them and potentially jeopardize the safety of crew and passengers. ICAO had already cited lasers as a possible safety threat and urged member states to take appropriate actions, such as adoption of legislation and public awareness campaigns to solve this problem. Canada will pursue its strategy in cooperation with implementation organizations and continues to inform the public and provide instruments to promote proactive involvement and raise awareness against lasers. The strategy will continue to include advertising and social media campaigns focusing on prevention and dissuasion. In so doing, this working paper invites the Assembly to support ICAO in efforts targeted at reducing laser attacks against aircraft in order to promote global aviation safety, and request member states to share information on best practices and strategies to mitigate laser attacks on aircraft. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Canada. I will now invite China to present working paper 303. China, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In China's 303 working paper, we talked about the update of IFSD rate in EDTO. One of the requirements for extended diversion time operations, EDTO, is the in-flight shutdown rate. The civil aviation authorities of various states usually specify respective IFSD rates in regulations or relevant guidance materials, but they have basically adopted the same standards. The current standards were established 30 years ago. With technical progress and increased overall safety level, they have become outdated. There were cases where the IFSD rates for some aeroplane and engine combinations could not be regarded as satisfactory in normal operations by the industry, yet could still meet the IFSD requirements for EDTO. It has lost its purpose as a threshold for alert. The CAAC therefore is making adjustments to its existing IFSD rates for EDTO in order to keep pace with the times and match the current safety level. This working paper recommends that coordinated global efforts are organized to enhance the IFSD standards in EDTO. It is recommended that we reconsider the practice of issuing the airworthiness approval in sync with the type certificate to ensure that sufficient data are collected before EDTO is approved. The Assembly is invited to take note of the information in this paper. If this proposal is accepted by the Assembly, then corresponding technical research and analysis should be initiated to develop proposed amendments on IFSD rates in EDTO contained in applicable annexes and relevant guidance materials. Thank you.
Thank you very much, China. We will now invite ICCAI, IATA, IBAC, IFAPA to present WP 271.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm speaking for ICCAIA. Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, Working Paper 271 is on regional aviation flight safety for turboprops, and it's presented jointly by IATA, IBAC, and IFAPA. Productivity is stimulating aviation development, and these operations provide a good way of responding to the demand. The regional market is served by turboprops is growing by 4% per year. The last annual report on aviation safety published by IATA cites accident rate of turboprops that's 8 times higher than jets. We also see in this segment that there is uneven performance across the regions. To achieve safety level that's comparable to the rest of the sector, we are working on technical areas such as surveillance and infrastructure. Certain countries are using visual flight rules for domestic airlines, but they are not commensurate with the growth. A number of estimates expect that 30,000 extra pilots will be needed and as many for maintenance. Pressure for good quality training is creating a risk for flight safety, and we have to uphold international standards and the training programs. In accordance with No Country Left Behind and Next Gen, special attention should be given to regional turboprop operations. The Assembly is invited to request ICAO to place turboprop operational safety as a high priority in its work program. Request an in-depth study of available data to assess and understand the causes for inadequate performance. Ask member states to work with service providers to establish instrument flight to procedures with vertical guidance in airports served by commercial aviation. Ask the Secretary General to identify actions to improve turboprop safety and present a report at the next high-level safety conference in 2021. Thank you.
Thank you, ICCAIA. This concludes the presentation of papers under this batch. The listed IPs will be included in the report. I'll now give the floor to the Secretariat for any clarifications.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, everybody. The Secretariat acknowledges the complexity of cooperative oversight as provided in Working Paper 108. The concept of cooperative oversight requires thorough analysis and study. We agree with the intent of the paper. However, the proposed Assembly resolution only asks ICAO to undertake this work. It would be more appropriate to make the last 3 paragraphs of the proposed resolutions recommendations from this Commission, and perhaps a need for a resolution can be discussed at the next high-level safety conference in preparation for the 41st session of the Assembly. With regards to Paper 117, the Commission is invited to note that ICAO, with the support of EASA and IATA, is developing the Foreign Operator Application Tool. This tool will facilitate the foreign operator application process by allowing operators to manage applications to participating states from one central location. Participating states will benefit from aggregated relevant ICAO data that should be taken into consideration for an application, and it will facilitate the state-to-state communication for any required validations. States that wish to partake in this project should contact the Secretariat. With regards to Working Paper 121 and 200, the Commission is invited to note that for the most part, the proposed actions are already addressed in Annex 8, Part 2, and or are currently being worked on by the expert group of the Cross-Border Transferability of Task Force, the Airworthiness Panel, and the Airworthiness Panel. And also, the Technical Commission is invited to note that work is ongoing to ensure that the updated information in Circular 95 is kept up to date, and actions are being undertaken by ICAO to ensure that the information is maintained that way. With regards to Working Papers 232 and 360, the Commission is invited to note that ICAO is not aware of any industry concerns with the adopted applicability date. Complementary GADS-related provisions for the new PANSOPS Volume 3 aircraft operations should be circulated before the end of the year, and ICAO is currently engaged in developing supporting tools, including a location of an aircraft in distress repository to support the January 2021 applicability date of the Annex 6 standards. We invite the delegates to see the Sky Talks on the subject, which is available from the ICAO A40 website. With respect to Working Paper 307 and 358, the Commission is invited to note that the global effective implementation of language proficiency requirements is above 85%. ICAO, with the collaboration of the International Civil Aviation English Association, is delivering workshops to help states in the development of quality English language tests that meet the ICAO standards. The Commission should also be aware that the Annex 1 language proficiency requirements are applicable to both spoken phraseologies, ICAO phraseologies, and plain language. With regard to written English requirements, a strategy to address that issue should be addressed at the regional level to take into consideration the challenges that individuals that speak other languages have with learning English. An example of such a group is the Language Proficiency Requirements Implementation Task Force established in the Euronat region. With regard to paper 303, the Commission is invited to note that careful consideration should be taken in any proposed modifications to the EDTO provisions to avoid undue burden to airworthiness approvals for states. And lastly, for paper 271, the Commission is invited to note that the benefits of vertical guided approaches is well known, and to recall that Assembly Resolution 837-11 urges states to implement approach procedures with vertical guidance for all instrument runways by the end of 2016. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Secretary, for the clarification. It's now 5 p.m. and we've reached an interesting part of this aspect, which is the discussion of the working papers. And I wish to entreat the interpreters to give us 10 minutes to conclude it. Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Yeah. So, United States, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With regard to Working Paper 108, the United States acknowledges the changing operating environment and the need for discussions regarding cross-border oversight. We support requesting the various ICAO panels and appropriate expert groups to identify areas for further exploration and request that ICAO provide a report on this activity at the upcoming high-level safety conference for further consideration. The United States acknowledges to some operators and obtaining timely authorizations for foreign operations as noted in Working Paper 117. However, any efforts to address the issue through standards should be avoided. The United States considers existing guidance and standards to be sufficient, but supports efforts to enhance familiarity on standards and guidance on operational approvals of foreign operators. With regard to Working Paper 124, we understand that many CAAs are asked to convert and validate licenses from partners. While document 9379 provides guidance in this area, the information may not be clearly understood. The United States would support an effort to address this issue, and we feel that would be best handled by the continuation of the July 2019 Personnel Training Licensing Exploratory Meeting. With regard to Working Paper 121, we support member states working towards harmonizing processes and standards to the maximum extent possible for the export and import of products. The Airworthiness Panel is already considering recommendations regarding principles and best practices for validating foreign products, and we recommend that the panel is the best venue for further discussions on this topic. We will also refer to the Assembly to Working Paper 296, pilot training improvements to address automation dependency. The United States supports pressing forward to the establishment of the distress tracking system as soon as possible. However, there will be challenges to CAAs and operators. We're sensitive that there is not sufficient time provided to operators to meet the January 2021 deadline as mentioned in Working Papers 232 and 360. We urge member states to be patient as international operators continue to work to equip their aircraft regardless of whether there is an extension of equipage deadline or not. The United States supports efforts to enhance English language proficiency for flight crews and air traffic controllers in Working Papers 307 and 358. We recommend that the Council determine the best forum to address the actions in these papers. Finally, with the United States agrees that the analysis of IFSD rates for EDTO operations of twin-engine aircraft discussed in Working Paper 303 would be worthwhile. We strongly suggest that this be done through an ICAO panel and robust industry participation before changes are made to ADTO requirements. There should be a sufficient body of data to support any need for changes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, United States. Bhutan, you have the floor. Oh. It looks like nobody's there, but the mic is on. It's invisible. So, kindly switch off. Thank you. It makes my work easier. Italy, you have the floor.
It's actually Ireland. Some confusion here in this corner.
Ireland, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Ireland wishes to acknowledge the challenges in the implementation of the Autonomous Distress Tracking SARPs and the broader Global Aeronautical Distress and Safety System, as outlined in Working Paper 360 from Russia and Working Paper 232 presented by Australia. ICAO, states and industry have made great progress in implementing aircraft tracking and autonomous distress tracking related SARPs since their inclusion in Annex 6, including developments such as new generation ELT-DTs compatible with ADT requirements. However, there are still certain elements of the GADS to be completed. Ireland welcomes ICAO's efforts to deliver the location of aircraft distress tracking repository by the end of 2020 and to perform the review of provisions related to post-flight localization prior to the applicable date in 2021. We can support the recommendations of Working Paper 232. However, we do not wish to see ICAO divert resources from the tasks just highlighted, which we believe should remain the priority at this time. We'd also wish to express our support for Working Paper 257 from Canada, Working Paper 124 from UAE, and Working Paper 271 from the industry groups. In relation to Working Paper 108, we note the Secretariat's proposal in relation to that. We'd like to take a little time to consider, and maybe we can come back to that in the resumption of this session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ireland. Spain, you have the floor.
Gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you, Chairman. On behalf of the European Union and its member states and states of Eurocontrol and ICAO of 44 states, we support Working Paper 108 presented by Georgia. The appearance of new technologies, new business models, and new operators who often operate outside the borders of one country requires new tools and instruments so that aviation authorities whose competence is limited to one state can effectively exercise oversight together with other authorities affected by the activity. We ask ICAO to collect information on the situation and then develop instruments to address the situation on the basis of practices of states and regions, and to update its standards so as to enable effective oversight of state and regional organizations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Spain. I invite IOPA to take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm still Kenzo.
Kenzo.
Kenzo would thank the Russian Federation for presenting Working Paper 307. We support the paper and are available to participate in a panel of experts to develop additional requirements when necessary for the ICAO radio telephony English phraseology proficiency assessment scale. Also, we'd like to thank ICC, IEA, IATA, IBAC, IFALPA for Working Paper 271. We support it and its actions. As the global voice of air traffic management, CANSO stands ready to support member states in their work with their air navigation service providers to establish instrument flight procedures with vertical guidance, ground or satellite base at airports that serves commercial operations for turboprop operations. Regarding Working Paper 108, delivered by Georgia, we would like to state that CANSO is in favor of cross-border operations for ANSPs, but we're not sure if ANSPs, the oversight should be with the state of the operator. This might not work for ANSPs as it does for airlines. For Working Paper 232 from Australia, we would like to thank Australia and the co-sponsors, and we fully support the implementation of GATS and recognises the need to assist SAR organisations to be able to implement these requirements. Thank you very much.
Thank you, IOPA. I can see the button in the at the top, at the upper deck. Which organization, please? Please take the floor, introduce yourself, and
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon from up here. I'm talking on behalf of IFATCA, the International Federation of Air Traffic Controller Associations. Mr. Chairman, IFATCA welcomes Working Paper 124 presented by the United Arab Emirates. IFATCA believes that it is essential to ensure the same performance standards are achieved and maintained globally for all aviation professionals, including for air traffic controllers. And to achieve this goal, one of the first steps to take is to ensure all states implement an appropriate licensing scheme for air traffic controllers, and to encourage states to implement their competency-based training and assessment provisions that are contained in PANS Training Part 4. It's generally recognized that those states which have implemented licensing schemes for personnel enjoy higher compliance with ICAO SARPs, and therefore it can be seen as a direct safety benefit. Finally, a thorough assessment of Annex 1, Chapter 4 provisions for controllers is long overdue, and IFATCA welcomes ICAO's recent EPL Task Force initiative. IFATCA is committed to continue to support the work of ICAO regarding qualification, licensing, and competency initiatives. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. It's now 5:11 p.m. and we've really run out of time. But I want to make a suggestion on how we could possibly proceed. I'm listening to the various interventions. I realize there's general support for the batch of papers. And unless you have an objection to the recommendations, we can conclude and summarize. Do you have any objections to the recommendations contained in the working papers? Japan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, all. Regarding Working Paper 358 presented by the Russian Federation, it does not contain any clear data that identifies the operational risks which are induced by insufficient ability to write English. So there is not the obvious need to develop additional requirements for the proficiency in written English. Therefore, Japan would like to ask the ICAO Secretariat to conduct the feasibility study initially to see if there are actual circumstances and necessity if appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you, Japan, for your objection. Is that Nigeria? Nigeria?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's going to be a very quick one. I just, in respect of Working Paper 200 by the United States, Nigeria wishes to propose that as one of the measures and also like an incentive for member states to continuously update their information on the ICAO Circular 95. ICAO should consider developing a protocol question, a PQ, on the use of CMA that may require for states to implement action in updating their various information that may be required by ICAO. Thank you.
Thank you, Nigeria. Is that Ecuador? Pardon? Egypt and Brazil.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just in relation to Working Paper 257 from Canada, I would just like to invite you to go through the guidance material that's been issued from MIDRASG, number RSA 12, related to laser attack. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. We're really out of time. Brazil, keep it short, please.
Okay, just regarding the Working Paper 108, we support that with the note from the Secretariat, and just mentioned that we'll present a paper tomorrow that is very connected to this working paper.
Thank you. So on this note, I wish to summarize as follows. Interpreters, please give me 1 minute to present a summary. The Commission agreed that ICAO should initiate work on cooperative oversight, and recommended that ICAO would take necessary actions as proposed on the last page of Working Paper 108. The Commission acknowledged the divergent procedures states have taken in establishing their foreign operator application processes and the undue burden that this puts on operators. The Commission noted the ongoing work ICAO is undertaking with EASA and IATA to develop the foreign operator application tool and encourage other states to participate in the project. With regards to the proposal on the conversion or validation of personnel licenses, the Commission agreed that ICAO should further develop the guidance to harmonize the licenses validation or conversion processes. The Commission noted the ongoing work to ensure that updated information is available in the online airworthiness information network, facilitate importation, design and certification of aircraft, and agreed to request that Council sets up a working group of experts to review the proposals to harmonize state of design certification procedures and specification. With regard to the proposal to survey states on their readiness to implement GATS provisions and concerns about the realism of current ADT implementation plans for GATS provisions, the Commission notes the ongoing work at ICAO to support the 2021 applicability date and agreed that ICAO should continue to focus on getting everything ready to support that applicability date, whilst also considering the possibility of surveying states to assess their readiness. Regarding the language proficiency requirement proposals, the Commission agreed that further review was needed on how best to address written English proficiency requirements, and that it should be taken into take into consideration ongoing regional initiatives. The Commission agreed to request that states share best practice on mitigation strategies for laser attacks. The Commission agreed to recommend that a group of experts review EDTO in-flight shutdown rates, but noted that careful consideration will need to be taken to avoid unintended consequences of any outcomes from that work. The Commission agreed that ICAO should support further analysis of data intended to improve the safety of turboprop operations and recalled Assembly Resolution A3711 regarding vertically guided PBN approaches. This concludes the summary of this third batch of papers under Agenda Item 30. Yeah, I hope I've captured the views accurately. Is there any addition, any objection? Yes, please. Which country? UAE. Okay, then we're going to come back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. We realize it's been a long day and no receptions. Therefore, we will invite you to a reception in Windsor Station. Have a delightful meal and conclude this evening. Thank you very much.
Wow, this is a good note to end. Reception. I thought we were going to object to the conclusions. Thank you, UAE, for making our day. So, on this note, the meeting is adjourned till Monday at 9:00 hours prompt. Thank you very much and have a good evening.